Sometimes, the heaviest burden isn't failure itself, but the feeling that you no longer have a reason to keep moving forward in this vast, indifferent world. On this particular rainy morning in the heart of New York City, Daniel felt like a ghost, an invisible man drifting through the echoes of his own life. He stared at the letter in his hands, the ink blurring into the paper, representing years of hard work and dreams that had just been quietly dismissed. Every step he took felt heavier than the last. The city was rushing past him, but Daniel felt stuck in a moment of absolute and crushing defeat. He had poured everything into his last project, his final hope, only to find that the world wasn't ready to listen, or perhaps simply didn't care at all. The cold wind bit through his thin jacket, forcing him to stop in front of a small, weathered cafe that looked like a relic from another era. He didn't want to go home to an empty apartment filled with unfinished ideas. He just needed a moment of warmth, a place to hide for a while. With a heavy heart and trembling fingers, he reached for the door, hoping the chime of the bell would drown out the noise of his failures. The sound was soft and welcoming, a sharp contrast to the harsh thunder outside. For the first time all day, the biting cold began to recede as he stepped inside. The scent of roasted beans and cinnamon wrapped around him like a blanket. He was no longer a victim of the storm. The rhythmic sound of the coffee grinder filled the air, a steady heartbeat in a world that felt like it was falling apart just moments ago. He watched the steam rise from the machine, a ghostly dance of heat and energy that seemed so much more purposeful than his own existence lately. He ordered the simplest latte on the menu, not because he wanted it, but because it was the only thing he felt he could still afford. He chose a seat in the back, away from the few other patrons, wanting to remain invisible even in this sanctuary of warmth and quiet comfort. He wasn't there for the taste of the coffee. He was there to disappear, to find a temporary truce with a life that had been so unkind. But life has a strange way of intervening. When we think we've reached the end of the road, plans are being made that we cannot yet see. Suddenly, a shadow fell across his table. An elderly man with a gentle face and a worn-out cardigan gestured toward the empty chair across from him. The man, whose name was Elias, didn't wait for an answer. He simply sat down, as if he knew Daniel needed a presence more than words. Elias didn't start with small talk about the weather or the news. He looked at Daniel's tired eyes and smiled with a wisdom that spanned decades. Daniel was taken aback. He wanted to be alone. Yet there was something in the old man's gaze that made it impossible to turn him away. Now, Elias didn't talk about success or money. He didn't offer empty platitudes. Instead, he spoke about the nature of the very thing they were drinking. "Think about the coffee bean," Elias said softly. "To become something beautiful, it must first be completely crushed and broken into a fine, dark powder dot, and then it must endure the scalding heat of boiling water. It is only through this intense pressure and heat that its true essence is released." He asked a question that hung in the air. When life puts you in hot water, do you become the water or do you become the bean? Daniel felt a lump in his throat. He had been letting the circumstances change him into something cold and bitter. Rather than using the heat to grow, the old man's words were like a key turning in a locked door. Daniel realized he wasn't being destroyed. He was being carefully and painfully refined. They talked for an hour. Daniel shared his failures, his fears, and his broken dreams. And for the first time, he felt truly heard and understood. Outside, the storm was losing its strength. Inside, the storm within Daniel's soul was finally beginning to subside, leaving behind a clear, quiet resolve. Elias stood to leave, not asking for anything in return. He had delivered his message, and he knew the seeds of change had been planted. Daniel watched him go, feeling a strange sense of loss, but also an overwhelming sense of gratitude. The world looked different through the cafe window. He picked up his coffee cup, but he didn't feel like a victim anymore. He felt like a man who had been given a second chance. As he stepped onto the sidewalk, the air felt fresh and new. The rain had washed away the dust, and the sun was reclaiming the city. He saw himself in a puddle, but he didn't see a failure. He saw someone who had survived the night and was ready for the dawn. He went home and started again, not with the same old ideas, but with a new perspective that was born from the pressure he had faced. He worked through the nights, fueled by the memory of the old man's words. Every setback was now just more heat to brew a better life. Doors that were once slammed shut began to crack open. People noticed the change in his energy, the quiet confidence that radiated from his very soul. The change didn't come from the $5 cup of coffee. It came from the moment he chose to stop running and start listening to his heart. Pressure is not your enemy, he realized. It is the tool that extracts the finest qualities within you. If only you have the courage to endure. He wasn't just building a career anymore. He was building a legacy. He understood that his value was defined by his resilience, not his results. 5 years passed like a whirlwind of growth and achievement. Daniel was no longer the broken man sitting on a park bench in the rain. He sat in his office, looking out at the same city that once felt so cold. Now, it was a landscape of endless possibilities and light. He still drank coffee every morning, but now it was a ritual of remembrance, a reminder of the morning that changed everything for him forever. One day, he returned to the little cafe. He didn't expect to see Elias, but he felt a pull to go back to where it began. There, in his old corner, sat a young woman. She looked just as he once did, lost, broken, and staring at a crumpled piece of paper. He didn't hesitate. He bought 2 cups of coffee and walked toward her table, the spirit of Elias guiding his every step and every thought. He sat down and shared the same story of the bean and the boiling water, paying forward the kindness that had once saved his own life. He realized then that success wasn't about reaching the top. It was about having the strength to reach back and pull someone else up to. Daniel never forgot that rainy morning. It was the most important day of his life, not because of the failure, but because of the pause. Looking back, he understood that the coffee didn't change his life. It was the decision to stop, to listen, and to find the courage. He found the courage to step forward one more time, even when the world told him it was over. He chose to be the coffee bean. So, when life puts you in your own pot of boiling water, remember Daniel. Remember the old man in the shop and the crushing pressure. What will you choose to become? Will you let the heat destroy you, or will you allow it to bring out your finest, most beautiful aroma? The choice is always yours. Take a breath, take a sip, and find the strength to start your journey again. You are not finished yet.